Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I didn't know reading the obituaries was going to be about like reading Chronicles or something. Kind of cutting into my time, too. We're blessed. We're blessed. I have my watch up here, so I'll be able to keep time. I'm going to start it, Nelson, so this doesn't go on too long. But when you're celebrating the life of somebody that's 101 years old, as with the family lineage there and the friends and the life's been touched, it takes some time. So thank you for being here today. Thank you, Carrie, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for this special time. I'm Scott Lemon. I'm Brad and Nancy's son, and I'm honored to be here. I do want to thank you on behalf of the entire Quickie family and the entire Lemon family for taking time to be here as we celebrate this long life of Mimi. We want to thank this community that's been so special to our family for many generations. And we certainly want to thank this church, and I mean the people of this church, for the love and the support and the faith foundation for our family through many generations. As we were walking through here yesterday to hear Diane reflect on those same stained glass mirrors that have been in this church for many, many years in several buildings, it's just a part of who we are. I want to thank Reverend Tom East for taking his time, and Rick Brooks for being with us here today, and Lynette for ministering to Mimi over her last years. You know, certainly I didn't realize that putting a bulletin together and getting the right picture on the front took so much time, but thanks to those that were patient and bared with us as we cropped pictures and got that together. And certainly Ms. Kay Howell for sharing her talents with us and the love that she has for this church. We've heard the caregivers mentioned: Kay, Faye, Janice, Roxanne, and Michelle. And these were the folks that loved and cared for Mimi through the last days. And they loved her like family, and she loved them like family, so we thank them for that. We are going to celebrate Eleanor Bradford Lemon. You know, to some, she was Miss J.K. Lemon, and she lived in that shadow, although they had been Valentines since second grade. To some, she was Miss Eleanor. And some, she was a pink lady. And we thank y'all for being here with us today. But to many of us, Charles, she was Mimi. And even to others in this community, she was Mimi, Tim. But I wondered, as I pondered what to share, some of the experiences that Mimi saw in her lifetime, lessons that I've learned from her and that she has taught for me, and how those have been woven through our lives and many of us in this room. You know, I went back and looked, and in 1915, it cost 2 cents to mail a letter. And I don't know how long it took to get there for 2 cents, but it took 2 cents. The federal budget, the entire federal budget, was $750 million. And there was 100 million people in the U.S. in it. Wimbledon wasn't played that year because of World War I that was going on. And then I guess one of the things I found interesting, in 1915, there was 45 cars in the city of Ocean Springs. And the O'Keefes had the 45th car that came to Ocean Springs. So we appreciate that. But probably one of the neat things I saw in 1915, which was the year that Mimi was born, that her father built a house for J.K.'s father over on Iberville that still stands to this day. So we look back and we think about how time has changed our community, but how much it's still the same. Also in 1915, there was a hurricane that hit on September 29th. And I guess one of the things that I found ironic about reading this is that I reflected back, and I was visiting Mimi one day, and she was giving me the weather report. It was like now, they're hurricane season. And she said, you know, Scott, there's 2 hurricanes in the Atlantic and 1 coming off the coast of Africa. And I'm thinking, here I am talking to a 95-year-old lady that is aware of what's going on halfway around the world when she was born, or in her days of being reared, they probably didn't know when it was coming off the coast of Horn Island, Tim.
Yeah.
But time has changed, and she was willing to change with it. Do you ever have a pity party? You know, one of those times where you're kind of down and you feel the weight of the world on you? Well, I was having one of those yesterday. And if you know me, I don't have them very often. But yesterday was one of those days. And it wasn't one of those moments that I was upset about losing somebody that had been in my life. It was just one of those moments where you say, what's next? How's all this going to come together? And I had already kind of started my day. I'd been to the gym, I'd done my reading. Barbara was going off with the grand dog, and I was heading to the office. Don, I got in the truck to our favorite radio station, morning show, Hard Rock. And as I pulled out the driveway, The Sound of Silence came on by Simon and Garfunkel. Now, I've never heard The Sound of Silence come on a hard rock station, but for whatever reason, it came on yesterday morning. And Kevin, I pulled over the hill on Holcomb Boulevard there and looked out over the Biloxi Bay and the Mississippi Sound, and it was calm, and it was peaceful, and I was taking it in, and I saw the pelicans soaring down the beach line. I saw the seagulls, that just like to sit on posts that time of day. And then there was an osprey hunting for its morning catch, Diane, and I remembered that that's what Mimi had taught me. It's about the peace that's around us. I can remember J.K. looking out his kitchen window and saying, Lord, thank you for another beautiful day. And I was grateful. As I got to the office, I really kind of started thinking more about Sounds of Silence. I said, you know, if I'm going to talk about this, I probably ought to know where this song came from. Paul Simon wrote it. Paul Simon was 21 years old, and what Paul Simon was thinking about, Charles, was he was upset with our generation or where our society was, and people just silently, apathetically going around and not sticking to who we are. And it made me think even further about Mimi. Because you know, as I think about the culture that Paul Simon was singing about, it's about a group of people in a culture that's a mile wide and an inch deep. A mile wide and an inch deep. So you say, Scott, what does this have to do with Mimi? And I say everything. You know, I guess really when I say everything, is because this time that I was seeking in my pity party was how am I going to live up to what Mimi has taught us? Megan, how are we going to carry on as we're expected to carry on as a generation and the generations that have taught us so well? She taught us so often by never saying a word, Linda. Never saying a word. And just teaching you by her actions. One of my favorite sayings by Francis Assisi is preach the gospel every day, and if necessary, use words. And that's what she has taught us. The other thing that I reflect on is that the greatest things in life aren't things. Now, don't get me wrong. Mimi and J.K. had a lot of nice things and surrounded all of us and shared all of us, those things with us. But that's what life was about. It was about a relationship with Christ. And it was about family that's all here together. It's about a strong business community and how to grow together. It's about learning to take care of those in need, and it's about gratefulness and generosity and unconditional love. Those are the things that matter. These are the practices of a culture that's a mile wide and a mile deep. And that's what they taught us. Okay, who's seen The Lion King? Tim? Tim. You know, there's a scene in The Lion King where Rafiki, the baboon, dead, one of our favorite animals, a monkey, where Rafiki, the baboon, he's the medicine man of the Pride Lands. And he has gone out and found Simba. Now, Simba had run off in life because he didn't think he was prepared to fill the role that his father had led him for and taught him to be. And if you remember this part of the movie where Rafiki goes back out and finds Simba, and they end up at this little pond or pool of water or river. And Rafiki shows Simba's his reflection in the water. And he said, "Simba, your father lives." And Simba said, "No, that's my reflection." And as they're sitting there looking, Mufasa, Simba's father's face comes along. And he said, "Look, he lives in you." And Mufasa said, "You have forgotten who you are. So you have forgotten me." So look inside yourself, and I ask each of us to do that today. You are more than what you have become. You must take your place in the circle of life. Remember who you are. Remember who you are. And as I think about my little pity party, most of it was of that burden, Kevin, to remember who we are. To remember what Mimi has taught us here and the influence she had in life. You know, I guess what I've recently learned, Henry, is that you can't go by life. Bill, you can't go around life. You can't go under life. We have to go through life. And that's what Mimi taught us. You think about 101 years and the things that she has faced. She taught us to be strong. Strong in the Lord. Strong in our faith. Strong in those around us, even when it's a struggle. We have to be able to lean in and lean on each other. Be no one's fool. And we have to forgive. We have to love each other unconditionally. And you know what? There are things in our past that hurt, Daniel. Some hurt really bad. But we can learn from them and we can finish strong, as Mimi did. So let's remember who we are. I had the chance to visit some with Diane and Jennifer specifically as we prepared for this. And we talked about some of the scriptures that we reflected on who Mimi is and were important. And I want to close with this because I think it was the example she taught all of us. It's usually at a wedding. It's usually not at a funeral, but it's from Corinthians. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love never ends. So now, faith, hope, and love abide, these three. But the greatest of these is love.